Welcome back to day 2 of our mental health week. And today we're going to talk about emotions, practical steps toward healing, and what healing looks like for me, which is not what you might think. And again, this is part of our life advice you don't hear in church series. Check out our first video if you haven't yet about counseling, medication, and mental health in general.
And I'm going to be sending out emails answering your eating disorder and dating with mental health questions. So sign up at the link below to get those emails.
So let's dig right into part 1 about emotions. Vanessa asked, is it normal that I have ups and downs? Sometimes it feels like someone is expecting me to be constant, so I take it as a destination to be constantly happy. I relate to that. I used to feel like I always had to have this happy face on, like that was the only acceptable emotion. Or if I was really struggling, the acceptable response was like, life is hard, but God is good, like very cliche and kind of covering it up. And you can say that and mean it, but for me, it was more like, this is what I have to say. It was more like an act or a mask. And I feel like that was very damaging in my life to just try and live under this mask instead of being honest with myself, with God, and with the people I trust. Because the thing is, like, life is not constant. I mean, even if you could look at our hormones just in everyday life as women, like our emotions go up and down depending on the time of the month. That is a real thing. It is not wrong. It is physical, biological, a real thing. And same thing with circumstances we go through. Like our emotions are gonna go up and down, and that's okay, that's normal. Being constant would be like being a robot. Like we have to remember, like God created us and He gave us our humanity as a gift, and He gets it. Now there's nothing wrong with having like a mask on at work or in certain places, but with the people that you really trust that know you, it's so important to let them into how you're really doing. Laura wrote, how do you have a healthy balance of knowing how you feel but not letting your emotions overtake you? That's tricky with mental health. I know there have been times when I felt really depressed and it has literally felt like I will never stop feeling that way, or I've felt like panic and anxiety and it feels like this is never gonna end. I think having people who can be with you in those places and in those moments, not to try and fix you, but just to be there with you and to remind you like you're not always gonna feel this way, that's huge for me. And so like just letting other people into that space, because it's easy to keep that part of you so buried down deep and isolated. And I've found that when I keep things secret and hidden, they hold a lot of power over me. So I try to let James, for example, my husband, I let him into those places with me and just say, this is how I'm feeling right now. Because emotions come and emotions go, and they can feel extremely overwhelming, and they can feel like the whole world and all our reality and all our truth. But at the end of the day, they're not. They are emotions, and emotions come and emotions go. Sometimes they last longer than others. But again, like we talked about in the last video, medication and counseling can be a huge help with figuring that out. Sarah wrote, how do you deal with invalidating your emotions? I often find myself saying, I shouldn't feel this way or I shouldn't feel that way. And it just makes the feelings worse than they would have been otherwise. You're absolutely right. It does. It makes them worse. If you think like, I can't feel this way, then you just feel guilt and then you spiral and then you feel shame and guilt and the emotions get worse and worse. I think for me, like James always tells me, sweetie, remember, like, this is what you're feeling. That's not wrong. It just is what it is. It's not a good or bad. It's not a moral issue. It's just, this is a feeling I'm having right now. Honestly, counseling has been huge for me in this area, and just having like friends who are a safe space to talk about my emotions, because I'll like feel a lot of shame in admitting I'm feeling a certain way, but then to hear them say, okay, yeah, you're feeling that way. That's okay. Let's talk about this now. That's really helpful. At least for someone like me, it's easy to think I need to have everyone agree with me and realize that I deserve to feel this emotion in order for me to feel okay with feeling it. And I have to just kind of recognize that there are times that you keep your emotions in a safe space with people that you trust. Okay, let's move into talking about some practical stuff you can do with mental health. Now, this is just stuff that has helped me personally. This will look different for every person. That's why I so highly recommend talking with a counselor and or a doctor, as we talked about in the last video. They can help figure out what will work for you, some strategies. But here's some stuff that has worked for me. Hannah wrote, what are helpful, healthy ways of coping with depression and anxiety? Okay, for me, I've realized that some of the things that trigger my anxiety are, number one, light. Like if there's not enough light in my environment, that will trigger insane, overwhelming depression. Like that I feel like I can't see outside of it. So I have to be in environments with good lighting. I know that sounds really weird and it's so simple in a sense, but just realizing that makes a huge difference in my emotions and mood. Another thing that triggers it for me is being too isolated. And I'm an introvert and I love my time alone, but it's easy to fall into these like depressive states and feel like Some of it is social anxiety, some of it is lethargy, like feeling like I don't have energy for anything, and it's easy to just kind of isolate myself even further. And I have to like just know that in those moments I'm going to reach out to a certain person. For me, that's usually James or my mom, and just say, can I hang out with you right now? Like, can we do something? Can we talk instead of watching TV? Or I just don't know what to do. I just feel really down. And he'll be like, okay, let's brainstorm together. And he'll come up with a list of things like, you could go to a coffee shop and read, you could go for a walk, you could text one of your friends and see if they're around to meet up. And he'll just help me like with this list of things that I can go through. Cause like in that moment, I don't even know what to do. So I just have to know, okay, that first step I'm gonna take, here's the first step. I'm gonna reach out to someone, and he kind of walks me through. And then a lot of times if I get out of myself, I do end up feeling a little better. That doesn't mean I feel like the depression's totally gone, but it like breaks some of the power of it in that moment. So know your first step. Write it in your phone, in a notebook. Like, when I'm feeling depressed, when I'm feeling anxious, this is the first thing I do. Here are some coping skills that I can use. I love doing yoga. For me, that's been extremely helpful with my anxiety, and just setting up regular counseling appointments. Those have been some of the really practical things I've done that have helped my anxiety and depression a lot. Lara says, how do you find the motivation to want to get better? That is so hard. I think just give yourself credit for every little piece of you that wants to get better. I remember a friend calling me up. She was in treatment for an eating disorder, and she called me up from rehab and was like, I just don't think I can do it. I don't think I want to get better enough. And I was like, the fact that you're texting me this, like, that in itself means that there's a part of you that wants to get better. Like, look at that part of yourself and ask, what is that part of me? Like, why do I want to get better? Even if it's only a little tiny bit, what is it that's motivating me to push through this? And for me, when I was working through my eating disorder, it was all about like, I want to be able to help other people feel good about their bodies. And that was the motivator. And there were times that that was the only reason that I didn't slide back into an eating disorder cycle. I mean, I would have, relapses, but like, there would still be this, like, I'm getting back up, I'm gonna get the motivation back because of this. So find what is that small piece of you that makes you want to get better, write it down, plaster it in places that you'll see it on your phone, on your mirror, wherever it is. Tell people you trust about it, and use that as like any time you're tempted to give up the fight, like remind yourself of your motivation. Maddie wrote, Christian circles often emphasize the importance of service and feeling better. And while that is important and that can bring positive feelings, I struggle to balance taking care of myself with taking care of others. There's this book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, and in it the author talks about the gift of limitations, to realize that our personality, our energy levels are gifts from God to us. He's put limits on us just naturally, and how much we can do and how much we can serve and how much we need to be alone versus with people and all that. And just to see that as a gift from God. What I've found is it is so important to get outside of ourselves and serve others, like you said, in order to find healing. That's a huge part of it. But recognize how you're feeling when you're doing the service. Like, when you're there, are you like, I'm so glad I came, this is really good for me? Or are you starting to feel bitter and like you just need to hide and you need to give back into these coping mechanisms that are unhealthy, whether that be self-harm or drinking or whatever it is? Are you starting to be tempted to go back to those things because you're feeling overwhelmed by the service you're doing? And just recognize, like, if you're in that service and you're thinking, this is so good for me to be here right now, I'm really glad I'm here, then I think you're at a healthy place. But if you're there thinking, I'm so overwhelmed, then maybe you need to take a step back. We cannot take care of other people if we're not taking care of ourselves. And so validate that that is important, and it's not being selfish to care for yourself. That's something I've struggled with a lot, is like, even as a mom, I feel selfish if I put myself first. And so, for example, like, there have been times when I'm like feeling like I'm about to pass out because I'm so hungry, my blood sugar's low, but I'm trying to take care of Natalie. And James is like, sweetie, you have to take care of yourself first in order to take care of our daughter. And I just need to remember that, like, it's not selfish, it's important, and it's a gift to others too. Sarah said, can forgiveness be used against you to keep you in company with toxic people? Yes. Go watch my video about forgiveness, which is linked in the description below. It talks about forgiveness versus setting healthy boundaries for yourself. So let's move on to the third section of this video, which is, what does healing look like? Crystal wrote, does it get easier or more manageable with time, or do you believe in a complete overcoming of mental illness? So again, different people have different answers to this question. It's such a personal question. For me, I feel like it's an Achilles heel. Like we all have areas in our life that are places where we tend to struggle more. Paul talked about a thorn in his side in the Bible. And I think we all have these areas where we are especially tempted in this area, or we're especially struggle. We have a weak spot in this area, right? And so knowing what that spot is can help you build support structures and plans of action to stay strong in that area. But I don't think, for me at least so far, those areas have not disappeared. I just am more aware of them and have worked toward building healthy responses to them. And so do I believe that I am healed? I guess I don't usually think of it in those terms. I think of it as like, yes, it is so much more manageable. It's so much better than it ever has been before, but it's still something I stay aware of and I continue to watch out for. So I guess I don't feel like, oh my gosh, I have no temptation toward an eating disorder anymore. I don't feel that way at all. But I do feel like, okay, I'm aware of it and I have a plan of action and I have a support system who sees me and knows me and can walk with me in this. And so that's the important part. Another person wrote, do you think that although I feel low and kind of hopeless and struggle with anxiety, can I still be part of a youth group leadership team and help younger girls in their spiritual growth? I admit the things I struggle with to them and I love studying the Bible and praying with them. But the thing is, I'm not sure if I'm setting the right example when I'm as a leader and not able to trust God and find peace in Him as I would wish my girls could. To be honest, I think you are the ideal leader for your youth group. You're aware of this struggle, you're being honest about it, and these girls get to watch you walk through a real life struggle and journey. Like, what better example could there be than watching someone say, I'm struggling with this and I am seeking help and I'm looking to God and I'm looking to other people as well, because God uses other people too, and I'm working on figuring this out and I don't have all the answers, but I'm on this journey. I just think that that is real life. I think that you are exactly the kind of person these girls need to see and that they'll relate to, because that's real. So I hope that can encourage you all.
And don't forget to sign up for those emails about eating disorders and dating with mental health at the link down below.
Love you, ladies. Bye.